The email arrived just after 11 p.m. It came with no subject line, just a name, Charlotte. Parker opened it out of habit, expecting another prank or another fan asking for attention. But the first line made his stomach tighten. I don't feel safe in my own home anymore. Her message was short, disjointed, as if written in panic. She said she was 19, studying in town, and had recently gotten a new roommate named Derek through an online listing. At first, he seemed polite, quiet, helpful even. But within a week, she began hearing things, footsteps in the hallway, whispers through the wall, her bedroom door clicking open at night when she knew she had locked it. The last sentence of her email read, "I think he watches me while I sleep." There was an attached video clip. In the dim light of her phone camera, Charlotte whispered into the lens, her eyes wide and wet with exhaustion. Behind her, a door creaked open on its own, the screen shook, and the video cut off. Parker leaned back in his chair. The room felt colder. Chester looked over his shoulder. "You think she's legit?" Parker nodded slowly. "Yeah, this doesn't feel staged." By the next morning, they were on the road. The drive was long, through stretches of forest and empty neighborhoods. The sun had already started to set when they reached Charlotte's house, a narrow, two-story building at the end of a quiet street. The curtains were drawn tight on every window, like the house itself was trying to hide. Charlotte answered the door almost immediately, as if she'd been standing there waiting. She was small, pale, and looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her hands trembled when she shook theirs. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "I know this probably sounds crazy." Parker gave her a reassuring smile. "We've seen a lot of strange things. Just tell us what's been happening." Inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach, like someone had tried to scrub away something unpleasant. The living room was spotless, too spotless. Every cushion perfectly in place, but the silence was the thing that unsettled them most. Thick, heavy, unnatural. Charlotte led them down the hall. "That's Derek's room," she whispered, pointing to a closed door at the end. "He doesn't like people going in there." "Has he done anything threatening?" Chester asked. She hesitated. "Not exactly. He's nice during the day. Too nice. He asks about everything, where I go, who I talk to, when I'm coming back. And at night," her voice trailed off. "At night he stands in the hall. I can hear him breathing outside my door." Parker exchanged a look with Chester. They'd both dealt with haunted houses, strange noises, even the unexplainable, but this felt human, and somehow worse. They decided to talk to Derek. When he opened the door, the smell of something chemical drifted out, a mix of cleaning solution and damp air. He smiled in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey," he said casually. "You must be the YouTube guys. Charlotte told me you were coming." His room was neat, too, but in a sterile, obsessive way. Every item on his desk was lined up perfectly. The blinds were shut tight. On the wall above his bed hung a single framed photo of a woman whose face had been scratched out with a knife. Chester noticed the name written in marker on the frame. "Mia, your old roommate?" he asked. Derek's smile twitched. "Yeah, she moved out. People always leave." Parker felt a chill crawl up his neck. "Charlotte says she hears you walking at night." Derek laughed, a sound that didn't quite match his expression. "Maybe she's dreaming. The house makes noises." Still smiling, he added quietly, "I keep an eye on her sometimes, just to make sure she's safe." The way he said safe made Parker's stomach turn. They thanked him for his time and stepped back into the hall. Charlotte was waiting near the stairs, her arms wrapped around herself. "He lies," she whispered. "He said his last roommate moved out, but her stuff is still in the closet. Everything, even her toothbrush." Parker looked back at Derek's closed door. "We'll find out the truth tonight." They began setting up the cameras as the sun dipped below the rooftops. One in the hallway, one in Charlotte's room, one pointing at Derek's door. The equipment clicked softly in the quiet house, each red light blinking like a heartbeat. When the setup was done, Charlotte sat on the edge of her bed, visibly shaking. "I don't want to sleep," she said. "What if he comes in again?" Parker knelt beside her. "We'll be right downstairs. You'll be safe tonight." She nodded, though her eyes said she didn't believe him. By midnight, the house had gone still. Parker and Chester watched the monitors from the living room, the glow of the screens, the only light. On one feed, Charlotte turned over in her bed, finally drifting off. On another, Derek's door stayed closed. 1:14 a.m. Nothing. 2:06 a.m. Still nothing. Then, at 2:43 a.m., movement. Derek's door opened. The hallway camera showed him stepping out, barefoot, silent. He looked down the hall toward Charlotte's room. The camera microphone picked up his breathing, slow, deliberate, almost steady enough to sound rehearsed. He began walking. Each step was careful, measured. He paused outside her door, resting his hand against it. For a long moment, he just stood there, head tilted as if listening to her breathe. Then he turned the knob and slipped inside. The camera in Charlotte's room switched to night vision. Derek's figure appeared, faint and green, standing beside her bed. She didn't stir. He leaned closer until his face hovered just above hers. Minutes passed, then hours. He never moved. When the morning light finally broke, Parker and Chester replayed the footage again and again, hoping it would look less disturbing in daylight. It didn't. They called Charlotte into the living room. The moment she saw Derek's face on the screen, her hands went to her mouth. "I told you," she whispered. "He watches me." Parker shut the laptop. "We'll handle it." Outside Derek's door, they could already hear movement, and for the first time since they arrived, the sound of breathing came not from the hall, but from right behind the door. The sound behind the door was slow and steady, like someone breathing through their teeth. For a moment, no one moved. Parker looked at Chester, then at Charlotte, who stood frozen on the stairs. The air in the hallway felt heavier with each passing second, pressing against their skin. Parker raised his hand and knocked. "Derek," he called quietly. "We need to talk." The breathing stopped. Then, after a long pause, the door opened halfway. Derek stood there, eyes unfocused, hair hanging in front of his face. "It's early," he muttered. His voice was calm, too calm. Parker tried to steady his tone. "We saw the footage. You were in Charlotte's room last night. You can't do that." For a moment, Derek didn't answer. Then he smiled faintly, like a child caught doing something harmless. "She looked scared. I wanted to make sure she was all right." Chester's jaw tightened. "You watched her for hours." Derek's smile faded. His eyes drifted toward Charlotte. "She needs someone to keep her safe," he said softly. "People hurt her before. I can feel it." Charlotte took a step back. "That's not true," she whispered. Parker moved between them. "We're done here. She's leaving today." Derek's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. He nodded once, slowly, and closed the door. The latch clicked into place. Charlotte's voice trembled. "He's not going to let me leave." Parker tried to sound confident. "He can't stop us." But as he said it, he couldn't shake the image of Derek's eyes, empty, cold, and yet somehow aware of everything. They packed Charlotte's things in silence. The house felt wrong, like it was holding its breath. As Parker carried the last box to the car, he looked up and saw Derek watching from the window, his face pressed against the glass. His lips moved soundlessly. Parker didn't want to know what he was saying. They drove to a motel just outside town. Charlotte stayed in the back seat, arms wrapped around herself, staring out the window. She looked smaller somehow, like the fear had folded her in on herself. That night, she refused to sleep. "If I close my eyes," she said, "I'll see him." Parker set up one of the cameras in her room anyway, just to reassure her. The red light blinked softly in the dark. He sat in the hallway outside, listening to the faint hum of the television. Around 2 in the morning, he dozed off. When he woke, the TV was off and the camera light was dead. He tried to turn it back on, but the screen stayed black. Then, faintly, a voice came through the speakers. "You can't protect her." It was Derek's voice. Parker froze. "Charlotte?" he called, pushing the door open. She was asleep, but something was wrong. Her hands were lying flat on her chest, palms upward, as if placed there by someone else. The room was cold. He glanced at the window. It was open. The curtains swayed in the wind. He rushed to wake her, shaking her shoulder. Her eyes flew open, and she screamed before realizing who he was. "He was here!" she gasped. "I saw him standing over me." Parker looked out the window, but the parking lot below was empty. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone had just been there, watching. They didn't sleep again that night. In the morning, Chester arrived with coffee, trying to sound normal. "We'll take her to stay with friends," he said. "Then we'll go back to the house, get whatever's left." Parker nodded, but part of him didn't want to go back. The footage, the voice, the way Derek had looked at them, it all felt wrong, too deliberate, too knowing. When they returned, the house was silent. The curtains were still drawn, but the front door was unlocked. Inside, the smell of bleach was stronger. Parker noticed a damp rag on the kitchen counter, still wet. He stepped into the hallway. Derek's door was open. The room was empty except for a chair in the center, facing the wall. On the wall, written in large black letters, was a sentence. "I only watch what I love." Chester's voice shook. "We should leave this to the police," but Parker walked closer. On the floor beside the chair lay something small and silver, one of their cameras. It had been taken from the motel room. He picked it up, heart hammering. The screen flickered to life. The last recorded file began to play automatically. The footage was from the motel, filmed from outside Charlotte's window. The view was shaky, handheld. In the frame, she was asleep on the bed. The camera zoomed in slowly, until only her face filled the screen. Then a whisper, barely audible, "You look safe now." The camera tilted, and for a moment Derek's reflection appeared in the glass, smiling. Parker dropped the device. Chester whispered, "He's been following her." Parker stared at the open doorway, every instinct telling him to leave. But before they could move, a floorboard creaked behind them. They turned. Derek was standing at the end of the hall. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. "You shouldn't have taken her away," he said softly. Parker stepped back. "Derek, listen. You need help." Derek shook his head. "I'm helping. She's safe now." He took a step forward, and the light above them flickered. For a moment, his shadow stretched unnaturally long. crawling up the wall like something detached from him. Then he smiled again, the same empty smile they'd seen on the footage, and whispered, "You'll see her soon." The light went out. There was a sound of movement, a crash, the door slamming shut. By the time they managed to force it open again, Derek was gone. Only the chair remained, facing the wall, the words above it still wet and glistening in the dark. The house felt colder after he vanished. Parker and Chester stood frozen, waiting for another sound, another flicker of movement, but the hallway remained still. The air hung heavy with the smell of bleach and metal, like something rotten had been scrubbed too late. They stepped carefully toward the back of the house. Every room looked the same, neat, ordered, lifeless, nothing out of place except for the sense that they were being watched. Chester stopped in front of a locked door near the kitchen. He said this was the old roommate's room, right? Parker nodded. Mia, the one who moved out. Chester forced the handle. The lock cracked, the door swinging open with a dry groan. The smell hit first. It was thick and sour, the kind that sticks in your throat. Dust floated in the thin beam of light from the hallway. The room was small, but every surface was covered with photos, hundreds of them of Charlotte. Most looked like they had been taken from inside the house. Her reading, cooking, sitting at her desk, sleeping. Each one pinned neatly to the wall with small metal tacks. In the center of the wall, written in pencil, were words repeated over and over. "She's not like the others." Charlotte's missing roommate's clothes were still folded on the bed. Her phone sat on the nightstand, the screen cracked, battery long dead. Parker opened the closet. Inside, tucked behind a pile of blankets, was a single camera pointed toward a small hole cut into the drywall. When he looked closer, he realized the hole led directly into Charlotte's room. He stepped back quickly, heart pounding. He was watching her through the wall, he said. Chester's voice was low. "This isn't just stalking, man. He's living in his own world." Parker's phone buzzed suddenly. Unknown number. He answered. No voice, only breathing. Then a whisper. "You shouldn't have come back." He hung up, trying to steady his hands. They searched the rest of the house. In the basement, they found a mattress on the concrete floor, surrounded by boxes of cleaning supplies and a small TV. The screen flickered on by itself, showing grainy footage of Charlotte sleeping. The timestamp was from the night before. "He's been here all along," Chester muttered. "He never left." A faint creak echoed from somewhere above. They looked at each other, then up at the ceiling. Slow, deliberate footsteps moved across the floor overhead. "He's upstairs," Parker said. They climbed the steps cautiously, each one creaking louder than the last. The hallway lights flickered as they reached the top. At the end of the corridor, Derek's door was open again, swaying slightly in the draft. Inside, the room was dark. Parker's flashlight swept across the walls, catching more photographs, newer ones, all Charlotte. Some taken from angles that made no sense, as if the camera had been inside her mirror or beneath her bed. On Derek's desk sat a notebook filled with messy handwriting. "She's safe when she sleeps. They took the others because they woke up too soon. I can't let her wake up." Parker flipped to the last page. A drawing filled the paper, Charlotte lying in bed. A tall figure standing over her, one hand on her chest. Underneath, scrawled in black ink, "Tonight." The sound came again, footsteps on the stairs below. "Charlotte," Parker whispered, realizing she was still waiting outside in the car. They ran. The front door was open when they reached it. The driveway was empty. Charlotte's phone lay in the gravel, the screen still glowing with a missed call. Derek. They shouted her name, their voices swallowed by the wind. From the trees behind the house came a faint sound, a woman's scream cut off halfway. Parker ran toward it, flashlight slicing through the dark. He found the edge of the woods behind the property. A shape moved between the trees, quick and fluid. He caught a glimpse of Charlotte's white sweater, disappearing into the shadows. "Charlotte!" he shouted. "Stop! It's me!" But when she turned, it wasn't Charlotte's face. Her eyes were wide and glassy, mouth curved into a faint smile that didn't belong to her. She took a step toward him, head tilting unnaturally to one side. "He said you'd come," she whispered. Parker froze. Her voice was layered, hers and Derek's, overlapping. Chester grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Run!" They stumbled toward the house. Behind them came the sound of leaves crunching, the whisper of breath just behind their ears. When they slammed the door shut, Parker looked through the window. Charlotte, or what was left of her, stood at the edge of the trees, motionless, watching. They didn't wait. They ran through the house, grabbing their equipment. Every light flickered, every shadow stretched longer. The TV in the living room turned on again, showing live footage of the front porch. Derek stood there, smiling into the camera. "You can't take her from me," he said. "She's safe now." Then the screen went dark. Hours later, they were back at the motel. Neither spoke. Parker replayed the footage, frame by frame, hoping for something that would make sense. But in every clip, Derek's face appeared somewhere in the background, in mirrors, in reflections, even in the corners of rooms where no one had been standing. At 2:37 a.m., the camera in their motel room flickered on by itself. Parker was asleep. Behind him, the door opened. A shadow stepped inside, crossed the room, and stood over him for several minutes. Then the shadow leaned down, its face pressing close to the lens. It was Derek. He whispered something the microphone barely caught. "You look safe now." The feed cut to static. When Parker woke in the morning, the room was empty. The window was open, the curtains fluttering. Chester's bed was untouched. His phone lay on the table, still recording. On the screen was a single new message written in the dust. "She's safe with me." Night came down hard, pressing the world into silence. The motel parking lot was empty, washed pale by the single light that buzzed above Parker's car. He sat behind the wheel, staring at his phone, replaying the last message from Chester over and over. "Don't come back." The call had ended abruptly, the sound cutting off mid-breath. Now his messages went unanswered. He knew what he should do, leave, drive, until the road blurred into daylight, but instead he turned the key. The car's engine coughed awake. The headlights caught the thin line of asphalt leading back toward Charlotte's house. He didn't remember making the decision to return. It felt like the road was choosing for him. The drive took less than an hour. The house stood waiting at the end of the cul-de-sac, black windows staring into the dark. The front door hung slightly open, swaying in the wind. The air smelled faintly of bleach again, sharper this time, like someone had tried to clean something that wouldn't come clean. Inside, everything was quiet. His flashlight cut through dust motes that drifted lazily in the air. The living room was the same, the couch perfectly straight, the television unplugged. The only sound was the faint creak of floorboards above him. "Chester?" he called. His voice came out smaller than he meant it to. No answer. He climbed the stairs slowly. The light from his phone flickered across the hallway. Derek's room was empty, the bed stripped bare. The walls covered now with hundreds of overlapping photographs. All of them showed Charlotte, but in these she wasn't sleeping. Her eyes were open, In each picture, she looked closer to the camera, until the final photo filled the frame with nothing but her face, blurred, mouth open in a silent scream. Something moved in the reflection of the glass. Parker turned sharply, but the room behind him was empty. He went to Charlotte's old room next. It looked untouched, bed made, desk neat, as if she might walk back in at any moment. But when he stepped closer, he saw the shape of a body under the blanket. His heart stopped. Slowly, he pulled the sheet back. It was a mannequin. Its face was painted to look like Charlotte's, lips smeared red, eyes crudely drawn on. Around its neck hung a sign written in Derek's messy handwriting. "She sleeps safe now." He stumbled back, bile rising in his throat. The air seemed to pulse around him, thick with the smell of damp wood and something sweet rotting underneath. Then he heard a low whisper from behind him. "Don't wake her." Parker spun. Derek stood in the doorway, shirt stained, face half in shadow. His eyes were wide, pupils blown, his voice calm and flat. "You shouldn't have taken her away," he said. "She's mine to protect." "Where is she?" Parker demanded. "Where's Charlotte?" Derek smiled faintly. "She's here. She never left." He took a step forward, and Parker saw the glint of a knife in his hand, long, thin, the kind used for cooking. Derek's tone never changed. "You don't understand. When she sleeps, she's peaceful. I just keep her that way." Parker backed into the wall. "You killed her!" Derek shook his head, almost sadly. "No, I kept her safe." He lunged. The knife flashed in the weak light. Parker ducked, grabbed the edge of the desk, and slammed it into Derek's arm. The blade clattered across the floor. They struggled. Derek's strength unnatural, his breath hot against Parker's ear. "You'll ruin everything," Derek hissed. Parker shoved him back and bolted down the stairs. The front door was open again, wind howling through the hallway. As he ran, the lights flickered once, then every bulb in the house burst at once with a sharp crack. Darkness swallowed everything. He stumbled toward the car, tripping over gravel. Behind him, the house groaned like something alive. He turned the key. The engine wouldn't start. The dashboard lights blinked, then died. Through the windshield, he saw movement on the porch Charlotte. She was standing perfectly still, hair falling over her face, white sweater stained with something dark. "Charlotte?" he called, stepping out of the car. She lifted her head. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused, her smile too wide. "You came back," she said softly. He froze. "We need to go. Derek's inside." She shook her head. "He's not inside." Something moved in the shadows behind her. Derek stepped into the porch light, his face calm again, as if nothing had happened. "She's safe," he said, laying a hand gently on her shoulder. "She sleeps now." Parker's chest tightened. "What did you do to her?" Charlotte looked up at him, her voice distant, almost mechanical. "I'm safe now." The two of them turned together and walked back into the house. The door closed quietly behind them. Parker ran forward, pounding on the wood, shouting their names, but there was no sound from inside. Then, from somewhere deeper in the house, the television flickered on by itself. The static light glowed through the cracks in the curtains. He peered through the window. The living room was empty except for the screen. On it played live footage of the doorway, him standing outside, banging on the door. The camera zoomed in on his face. A voice whispered through the static. "Now we're watching you." The power cut. The entire street went black. He didn't remember driving away. One moment the house filled the rearview mirror, shrinking behind him. The next, he was miles down the road, hands gripping the wheel hard enough to make his knuckles ache. When the car finally ran out of gas, he left it by the roadside. The night was empty and silent except for his breathing. He looked at the phone in his lap. It was still recording. The red light blinked once, twice, then turned off. Later, when investigators found the footage, the last frame showed Parker sitting in the car, staring straight ahead. Someone was in the back seat, just barely visible, a figure with long hair, watching him. The report ended there. The car was empty when they found it. The phone was gone. Days passed before anyone went looking for them. The motel manager reported the room abandoned, the sheets untouched, one light still burning in the bathroom. The police found Parker's car on a back road 2 towns away, empty, engine cold. Inside the glove compartment was a flash drive labeled in shaky handwriting, "Watch this." The detectives loaded it in at the station. At first, there was only static, then a faint hum. Slowly, an image appeared: Parker sitting in front of a camera, face pale, eyes rimmed in red. The background looked like a basement, concrete walls, a faint drip somewhere off-screen. He spoke softly, voice flat. "If you find this, don't go back to the house. Don't look for her. Don't try to help. It doesn't stop when you leave." He paused, rubbing at his temples, then looked straight into the lens. "It sees through the camera. It watches through recordings." Derek thought he was protecting her, but it wasn't her he was seeing anymore. It was something else wearing her face. The sound distorted. Faint whispers rose beneath his words. A woman's voice, layered, repeating the same phrase again and again. "You look safe now." Parker's breathing quickened. He glanced to his left, then leaned closer to the camera. "It followed me. When I close my eyes, I see them both. He's still watching her, and she's still watching me. If you play this back..." He trailed off. For a moment, he seemed to listen to something behind the microphone, then smiled, small and wrong. "It's already too late." The video ended in static. They searched the house again. It had been empty for weeks, the windows covered with boards, the locks broken. Yet when the team entered, the lights flickered on by themselves. The air felt damp and heavy, as if someone had just breathed out. In the living room, the television glowed faintly, even though it was unplugged. On the screen was a live feed, a police officer walking through the front door, flashlight trembling. The officer froze, staring at his own image on the TV. Then the feed changed. It showed him standing in the same spot, but behind him now stood a figure, a woman with long hair covering her face. The officer turned around quickly. Nothing there. When he looked back, the TV was black. A week later, the footage leaked online, grainy, under a new title: "We found him watching her sleep." People assumed it was fiction, another horror short made to scare views out of an audience. The comments filled with jokes, theories, timestamps, but every time someone played the video, something strange happened. The frame rate shifted slightly, and for a few seconds, a reflection appeared in the background, not Parker, not Derek, but someone else, standing just out of focus. At 2:43 inches every upload, the same whisper could be heard beneath the sound design. "She looks safe now." No one could edit it out. Even when the video was re-uploaded, mirrored, or trimmed, the whisper remained, quiet but clear, like breathing against the microphone. Months later, a new email arrived in the Life of Luxury inbox. It had no subject line, just a single sentence: "I think he watches me while I sleep." Attached was a still frame, a girl in bed, lit by night vision. In the doorway behind her, a man stood perfectly still, face hidden by the dark. The timestamp read 2:43 a.m. The message had no sender. When Parker's old laptop was examined, investigators found the system camera still active. It had been recording for days after he disappeared. The final frame showed the empty motel room, curtains moving gently, the red light of the camera blinking once, then going dark. In the reflection of the window, two figures could be seen, one tall, one small, both facing the lens, both perfectly still. The case remains open. The footage circulates quietly online, spreading through mirrors of mirrors, accounts with no origin. Each time someone plays it, the whisper sounds a little closer to the microphone. "You look safe now." Then silence.